Hi everyone, it's Robin with Bouquet and Florist in Vancouver, Canada. I have a video today for you on the topic of baby's breath. So the purpose of this video is twofold. One, I'd like to show anyone in the Vancouver area that's looking to buy baby's breath through our business what a typical bunch looks like. I get asked that a lot. It's a very fair question because it's hard to gauge volume from a photo. And the other purpose is to show you how to make a baby's breath bouquet, which would be something you could do for a bridesmaid bouquet or a bridal bouquet, depending on what you're looking for. So this is one typical bunch that we sell. I can't say that all florists sell the same size, although I will say this is a typical, what they call grower's bunch. It's 7 stems. That seems to be about average for what these bunches have. So if you're looking to source it through someplace else, just ask about the number of stems to give you an idea of the size. And if it's something similar, this is what you can expect. The variety that I have here, so there's 2 different types of varieties that we sell, and you're going to come across if you're looking for baby's breath. There's one that's called New Love or Overtime, which is this one. It has fewer flowers but bigger flowers. So they're like little popcorn heads almost, like they're really fluffy, they're really big and white. The other variety that's more common is called Million Stars, and this is the one that you're probably going to see in like bouquets at the grocery store. They are lots and lots of little flowers, but they're quite a bit smaller. They're both beautiful. But which one you choose is going to depend on the look you like, really. So I like Overtime and New Love. I think they're really beautiful, and I especially love them for a bouquet, which is what we're going to make here today. So in terms of making a bouquet, you can just take a bunch literally and like just squish it together and make a bouquet like this. I prefer something that's a bit more rounded, not quite so rustic, but I mean, you may love this look and there's nothing wrong with that. And there's nothing easier either than just grabbing a bunch and tying a ribbon around it. But we're going to do a more sort of controlled shape to the bouquet. And the way to get that done, so I've kind of separated these stems already. So you'll see that what happens on a single stem is that you have the baby's breath kind of growing at different levels. You have some that's down here and some that's up here. So what I want is something that's more of a ball shape by the time we're done. At the very least, it'll still be wispy. There'll still be bits sticking out, but it's going to be a more controlled shape. So the way I do that is I like to trim the individual stems. And I don't do them all. I don't cut every single stem, but at least the bigger ones that are at different levels, I will cut. So I'm going to show you on this one. Baby's breath has a tendency to get really tangled up. So that's just something you want to watch, that you're not pulling off too many heads when you do that. So we're already starting to break it off into smaller pieces. I've got this one, and this one's pretty good. I think I'll just trim this one and leave these 2 together. Do I want to leave them together? Yeah, I think I will. I think they're about the same height. I might trim that one off later. So that's what I would do. I would take each individual stem, these 7 stems, and cut them into smaller pieces, which you can guess what I'm going to do next is I'm going to start assembling them so they're all roughly at the same height, which is how we get a rounded shape. I'm going to do this quickly off camera just to save some time, and then we'll get back together when everything is pre-cut. So I've got everything ready to go, but before I do, I just want to go over the supplies really quick. It's the same kind of stuff we've used in every single one of our bouquet videos. It's the floral snips that I really like. Baby's breath is, like you can see the stems are really thin. It is one time that you can get away with just using regular scissors. They're really easy to cut through, but if you're working with other flowers, snips are a good thing to have on hand. We have our usual strapping tape, which I like to use to bind to the stems when you're done. Again, it's stronger than the boutonniere type floral tape, which isn't as sticky or as strong. But again, this is one time because the bouquet is going to end up very, very thin, like the stems. It's one time you could get away with using something like a floral wrap, and I think you would be fine if you did. But because I have it, I have my strapping tape. Regular scissors to cut the ribbon. I've got ribbon to use to cover the stems when we're done. Lace seems to be the perfect complement to the rustic quality of the baby's breath. That's what I have. You've got your short pins, the 3/4 inch ones that are the best for inserting into stems, I find, and you're really going to appreciate a shorter pin today because, like I said, when we're done, the stem of this finished bouquet is extremely thin. So the shorter your pin, the better. And we've got a vessel of water to put the finished bouquet in. In this case, it's a mason jar. You can get away with a mason jar for this one because baby's breath isn't very heavy, so it's very light and it won't topple over because the vase is smaller. So that's pretty much it. We've covered our supplies. So I cut each stem into about like 4-ish pieces. So we've got about 30 now. And to get started, it's pretty simple. It's the same way you get started on most types of bouquets. You find one central stem and you're just going to start adding in other stems beside it. So keep in mind that as we're doing this, our goal is to end up with something that's roughly ball shaped. It's going to be very rough. It's hard to get baby's breath to not be wispy. It's just the way the flower is, but it will have a more controlled and what I'd call a deliberate shape compared to just the bunch by itself. So you start adding in your pieces, just keeping in mind sort of the overall balance of everything. And you just keep turning it around. If you have a mirror, that's great. If you don't have a mirror, just keep turning it around and being sure that you're filling in any gaps. Like here, there's kind of a gap. Actually, I'm gonna, I don't know. That one's kind of, there's a bit of baby's breath that's dry here. So I might trim that off later. I wanna make sure that everything is roughly at the same height. There's that tendency to get tangled that baby's breath has. It's not a difficult bouquet to make. It's just a little bit time consuming. That's all. But I mean, that's again your choice. You could just do it the way I showed you at the beginning and just sort of grab a bunch of baby's breath and tie it together. But if you are looking for a very specific shape to it, you might prefer something like this. So it is coming together, more or less rounded. That's good. We're almost about halfway through the bunch. So in terms of quantity, I like to use one bunch per bouquet. It makes a good size, you get good symmetry. If you're really on a tight budget, you could get away with two bouquets out of one bunch. They would just be smaller, so something like this, which is still a great size for a bridesmaid. This is a great size for a pew marker. I like using half a bunch for a pew marker just because it does stretch most customers' budgets, and it's still a very full look, especially if you choose something like Overtime and New Love, which has the bigger heads. Okay, so all we're doing is adding in these little bunches, holding it really tightly where the stems come together, and we're starting to get a really nice rounded shape to it. I'm gonna save a little bit more time by pausing the video here while I finish up, and I'll get back with you guys when I've got a completed bouquet. So we're done. I've used all of the stems that were in that bunch. It's a very generous size. If I hold it up to myself, it's quite a good size bouquet actually. It's about 10 inches across. So like I said, I recommend using one bunch for a bouquet, but again, if you're in a really tight budget and you're making it for bridesmaids, I think you'd be fine getting away with half a bunch, but again, making sure what you're starting with is pretty generous. So about 7-8 stems would be best. So yeah, I think we're ready to tie it together. Before we do, I'm just gonna trim the bottom really quick because I like it a little bit more neat and tidy. They're a little bit long for me. In terms of the finished length, it's like about 2.5 hand fist length, you could say, in terms of what you're aiming for. So we could cut it even a little bit shorter, but we're not gonna worry about that right now. To bind it, I'm gonna use my strapping tape. The nice thing about a baby's breath bouquet is it's incredibly easy to handle. It also comes together really fast too. I mean, it is more work than people realize to make it, especially when you're looking to make it a more rounded sort of shape. But I'd say it took me from start to finish about 15 minutes from the time I started cutting the stems to now. That's a pretty generous estimate, I'd say. So yeah, a really quick one to put together. Okay, so that's it. And again, it's got that rounded profile to it. I'm not gonna put the ribbon on. We've done it in other videos. It's very easy, even especially if you're using something like lace, you can just tie it on. You don't even have to do the winding around with the pins in it if you don't want to. So the last thing to cover is, okay, so if you watch the other videos, you're gonna recognize something. Some of these stems are really short. So from the other videos, you know the importance of keeping flowers in water overnight, or as long as you have to before you need to use them. So the challenge you would have is if you just had a little bit of water in a vase and you put it in, is some of those shorter stems are not gonna reach the water and they won't drink. Baby's breath doesn't really wilt, but it dries up, and you don't want little bits dried up in your bouquet. Wedding work is it needs to be high quality, especially with the photography nowadays, which is very precise. So you have two options here. What I would do is I'd put it in my cooler. I'd put it in a little bit of water that it needs for the longer stems, but I would put it in my cooler and that would keep it fresh. Most people aren't gonna have cooler space. So the other option you have is to fill your vase as high as you can so that when you put your bouquet in, I'm just gonna trim it again a little bit shorter. When you put your bouquet in, you want the water level to go to the very shortest stem. As long as the shortest stem is sitting in water, you're in good shape. So 2 different options for you depending on what sort of resources you have on hand. As long as you can keep it in water or keep it cold, it's going to last very well. It's an excellent choice for any sort of a rustic themed wedding. I think I've covered it all. If you have any questions, just drop me a line at info@boutejardin.com. Visit our website, boutejardin.com. We're located in Vancouver, Canada, and I will see you guys next time. Thanks.